My grandfather used to say something to me all the time growing up. After paying me for helping with the yard work, he would lean back in his chair, look at me real serious, and say, "Grandson, any man can make a dollar, but it takes a wise man to spend it." That line has stuck with me my entire adult life. My granddaddy was born in 1920 and raised by his grandparents in a small town on the Florida panhandle along the Gulf of Mexico. From a young age, he learned the value of hard work and responsibility when he sold oysters and fish around town at the age of 10. As a teen, he was waking up at 6 a.m. in the morning to work odd jobs before school to help support the household. After graduating from high school, he worked in a paper mill. He worked as a fisherman in Mississippi. He worked in a lumber yard. He helped build an Air Force base in a town about an hour away. Anything that he could do to help bring in some dollars and help ends meet and support the family, he did. And he went on to serve in World War II and later used the GI Bill to attend college where he earned a teaching degree. And he didn't attend college until he was about 30 years old. Over time, he worked his way up to being a high school principal and eventually a district administrator. But what made him special wasn't just his career. My granddaddy was a wealth builder. He saved money faithfully, starting as a teen, and that continued throughout his adulthood. He had savings accounts and CDs and money market accounts all across the Florida panhandle at different banks. Him and my grandmother owned land, they owned homes, and they were entrepreneurs who owned a small grocery store and the oyster distribution business for several years. And throughout his life, he kept repeating two lessons to his children and grandchildren. First, it was any man can make a dollar, but it takes a wise man to spend it. And second, it was there's two ways to make money. You work for it and have it work for you. This show is about those two ideas because years later, I discovered an asset and a financial strategy that fits perfectly with the principles that my granddaddy lived by. And in this show, I'm going to share what I've learned about it and how I'm using it to build intentional wealth for myself, my family, and the communities that I'm a part of. Welcome to Wise Man's Dollar. Welcome to Wise Man's Dollar, a show for everyday working people who want to keep more of what they earn, make wiser decisions with their money, and build a legacy for the next generation. I'm Sunjata, and I'm so glad that you've decided to join me. If you followed my work in the past, you know that I've spent years thinking about systems and how we create more liberating ways of living. Well, last year I stumbled upon the concept of becoming your own banker and creating a family banking system using the infinite banking concept, and I became really, really intrigued. I challenge convention and live an intentional life in many ways, including how I think and manage the money that I earn. Literally been a budgeter my entire adult life because of things I've learned from my grandfather. I saw him budgeting and he sat me down, broke it all down to me, and I've been doing it ever since. So these concepts felt really empowering to me when I learned them. And ultimately, I decided to do a deep dive and to learn more. And I started studying arguments for and against it. This show is about what I've learned and what I continue to learn along this journey and how they align with the wisdom of my granddaddy. My hope is that it inspires and empowers you to take control of your money, keep more of what you earn, grow it with less risk and more efficiency, and leave a legacy behind that makes playing the money game a little bit easier for the next generation. So I want to start out by telling you a little bit more about the wise man, my granddaddy. So, as I stated in the opening, he was born in 1920, and both of his parents passed away when he was really young. So he was primarily raised by his grandparents and his older sister. And my granddaddy grew up with a strong work ethic and a desire to contribute to the household from a very early age, starting with helping out his grandfather with delivering seafood all around town or along the local beaches. And it evolved to, him eventually getting a job at a local dairy farm and a local barber shop, sweeping up hair, and just different things that he could do, different odd jobs that he could do, again, to help, supporting the family. He even began getting up at 6 a.m. just so he can get out and get some work done before school started. And he did that all throughout high school. My grandfather, and one of the things that's interesting as well is he started saving and getting really excited about being a saver even back then when he was in high school. He didn't just go spend all of his money. In his young adult life, after high school, he worked at a lumber yard. He worked in the paper mill, which was a really, really good job back then. He worked and helped build a local railroad and an Air Force base that was about an hour away, that still stands to this day. So, in addition to that, he went out and did some porgy fishing out in Mississippi with his grandfather. He even worked a job in Fort Lauderdale one time. For whatever reason, when different projects were done, like a railroad or the Air Force base, et cetera, he lost the job and had to go find something else. And at one point, he left his small town, Apalachicola, Florida, and went all the way down to Fort Lauderdale, 3, 4, 5 hours away, to work down there, leaving my grandmother behind just so he could send money home. Just whatever it took to make ends meet wherever he had to go, he was going to go and work. Ultimately, in his late 20s, he ended up being drafted into the army and served during World War II. This led to him being able to go to college and receiving the GI Bill to do so. He attended Florida A&M, and he would drive over from Apalachicola about an hour and a half drive to Tallahassee. And over time, he was working and going to school, and eventually he earned his teaching degree. And after being a teacher, again, at one point, he had to leave Apalachicola and leave my grandmother behind and take his first teaching job down in Ocala, Florida, near, I believe that's near Tampa or, yeah, I think it's down that way. Central Florida, Tampa, Gainesville, more so, yeah, Gainesville, Florida, near there. And he taught there for a few years, and eventually he got a job back in Apalachicola as a teacher. And mind you, he was teaching at the segregated schools, back then. And later, he became the principal at the segregated school for all the African American children. Then eventually segregation happened, and he helped usher that transition in for, the students that he led. And ultimately, he became a district administrator, and they ended up naming a street after him in a room in the new high school that was built, I believe, shortly before he passed away. A new high school for the entire county was built, and they named one of the rooms after him. So my grandfather had a major impact on his small town. He was a leader. He was a beacon of light, and he was well respected and loved in that town. And that had a great impact on me because I saw that as a child growing up whenever I would visit in the summers. So, in addition to his education career, he was an entrepreneur. My grandfather, he owned a small grocery store. He he helped build his family home. He bought land and property around town, different land and property all around town over the years, including the land that he and my grandmother built their home on. And he eventually, actually helped build it, with the contractor that they hired. He spent a lot of his evenings after work contributing to building that home. And as I stated several times, he was a prolific saver. He was known for saving consistently. And he had savings accounts and CDs at banks all across the Florida Panhandle. That was his way of, not keeping all his eggs in one basket. And the two lessons that he repeated to us over and over again, that's going to be a theme of this show you're going to hear often. Any man can make a dollar, but it takes a wise man to spend it. So, what was the lesson behind that one? Well, the lesson behind that was it doesn't matter how much money you make if you don't use it wisely. I've learned that in my adult life because out of the many things I've done as a serial entrepreneur and as an educator throughout my adult life, I was a mortgage broker and a real estate agent at one point. And I would work with lots of people who made money all across the scale. Some people made a little, some people made a lot. But there were people who made a lot who were still living paycheck to paycheck. And there were some people who made not as much, but had way more money set aside in savings. And like the lesson, the lesson that my granddaddy, imparted on me and my siblings and cousins, and a lesson I imparted on my son recently is wealth isn't how much money you make, it's how much money you save, it's how much money you keep. That's what wealth is. And the second lesson that my grandfather often repeated was there's two ways to make money. You work for it and have it work for you. He would say that to us all the time. And I believe the lesson in that was you have to do what it takes to earn a living for yourself and your family. And then you put that money to work by saving it in an environment where it can grow and earn interest. But let me say this, a safe environment where it can grow and earn interest. You see, my grandfather didn't gamble on the stock market. He believed in putting his money in safe investments that had little to no risk. So that's why, again, different liquid assets at banks, as well as buying land and homes, things that over time would appreciate in value. So recently, I discovered a financial tool and a process that fits perfectly with those lessons. That tool is properly designed, dividend paying whole life insurance, which can be used to help people become their own banker using something called the infinite banking concept. The infinite banking concept is a strategy that helps people recapture the interest on the things that they normally finance throughout their lives with a conventional bank or credit card by becoming their own banker. And if you don't pay interest, that equals growing your own wealth instead of the wealth of other banks. So I'll go deeper into that concept in a later episode. But I want to share with you a little bit about how I stumbled upon this concept. So it was while I was doing some research about starting a family bank to preserve my grandparents' legacy. And I just happened to, it's something I had thought about over the years because I knew that my grandparents left behind, some assets. And I just thought that it would be cool if we started a family bank and if, especially with like the monetary assets or if we ever decide to liquidate any assets so that we didn't just spend the money, spread it out amongst his grandchildren and spend it. It's like how can we use it in a smart way where we it's always being replenished. So for whatever reason, I had this idea we should start a family bank, and when we if we loan from it, we pay it back with interest, and by doing that, we're continuing the legacy that they started, and we're leaving something behind for future generations. And so when I learned about this concept called the infinite banking concept, I just got educated on it, and I became really excited about the benefits that I learned about. And I also, of course, came across the doubters, the naysayers, the skeptics about this particular product, um, called the infinite banking concept that helps people become their own banker, because it's facilitate that process is facilitated through a specially designed or properly designed dividend paying whole life insurance product. And there's a whole lot of financial gurus and talking heads out there who say that whole life insurance is not a good investment. But here's the thing. One of the biggest misunderstandings about whole life insurance is that people think of it as an investment, but it's not an investment. It's actually an asset designed for saving, storing capital, and creating financial control. So here's a simple definition. A properly structured, dividend paying whole life insurance policy, like the ones used for infinite banking, builds cash value over time and gives you access to the capital while it continues to grow. So I want you to stick a pin in that, because in future episodes, I'm going to break that down and show you exactly how it works. So I'm going to pause right there because I want these episodes to be short, bite sized bits of information for you to grasp and be introduced to learning about this asset and this strategy called the infinite banking concept, and the asset being properly designed, dividend paying whole life insurance policies. So that's it for now. Thanks for tuning in to the first episode of Wise Man's Dollars. I'm so excited that you're along this journey with me where I get to talk about all the wonderful things that my grandfather, with the support of my grandmother, were able to accomplish in their lives, and the example they were able to set for their children, their grandchildren, and their community. So I'm excited I get to share those stories and tie that into something that is making a positive impact for his offspring in the present day. And anyone who knows me who happens to stumble upon this show. So, if you enjoyed this episode, please help me build this channel so we can spread this information by hitting the like button, subscribing, and dropping a comment or asking a question in the comment section. And share this with someone you care about, because wisdom grows when we pass it down. And remember, like my granddaddy always said, any man can make a dollar, but it takes a wise man to spend it. I'll see you in the next episode. Peace.